This is Tekedia Daily with Ndubuisi Ekekwe. Today we'll be discussing how we can use smiling curves to demonstrate where values are created across industrial sectors. And extrapolating for that will make a case why the Nigeria's manufacturing strategy must look beyond pure fabrication and manufacturing to other elements. I take you back into the smiling curves. The smiling curve was actually first put forward by the founder of ASA, a very big global computer making company. Uh, the founder noted that despite the fact that everyone was fixated on the manufacturer, however, that the real value is actually created not in the real manufacturing. Because if you look here, if the vertical axis is value, that where most Asian companies are focusing is actually here. And this is the lowest point of value. That the value derivable in making computers and digital systems, most of them are actually generated by companies that operate at the level of patent and technology. These are companies that are involved in innovation, involved in the research and development, like Intel, Microsoft. So they get a lot of value. Then at the other end of it, you have companies that now focus on branding and service. They drive the marketing, how some of these hardware solutions are actually being used in the market. For example, is Accenture, which now focuses on making sure that these devices which have been fabricated are actually coming into reuse in the market. There is also Google, of course, that depends on the fact that people use PCs, people use tablets and phones. So the point is this, that for any nation or for any company, if you are fixated on these elements, you are not necessarily going to get a lot of value. You are not necessarily going to make a lot of headway because the competition here is extremely huge and the margins are so small. And if you look at here, most of the companies that are operating here, they employ a lot of people. But at the end of the day, some of them are also seeing a lot of friction, like Sony, which is going through a lot of tumultuous moments, and so many of them. Now, the same thing is also noticeable when you go into publishing. In publishing, you have some of the elite writers or syndicated authors. These are people that they have a brand of themselves. And when they publish their content, when they generate their content, they push them across like New York Times, Guardian newspaper, Thisday Nigeria, and these are basically content delivery entities. And then, but the people that make most of the money are the people here. These are the content creators or the content discoverers. So essentially, Google helps you through Google News to see the snippets of all these contexts, and Twitter also helps you to read about what is going on. Facebook, but the publishers themselves are not necessarily getting a lot of value. They are not necessarily partaking a lot. That is why you see so many newspaper companies around the world going into bankruptcy, and most of them being acquired, most of them just being constructed. So the value is here because the friction that existed between the writer and the consumers of news or publishing the product, technology has essentially made it extremely removed it, has made it easier. So increasingly, we know the people that are writing, but we don't necessarily care the platform upon which we are reading about what they are writing. As that happens, we are eroding the values that companies like New York Times, Thisday Nigeria, they are actually creating. And that's why they continue to struggle in terms of advertisement. They can't pay their staff, especially in Nigeria, where most people are working in the most damaging scenarios in the news media industry. So now, I extrapolate this by looking at the financial sector in Nigeria. Here you have the banks. You have most of them, I call them the delivery partners in the sense that they just provide the infrastructure upon which the transactions of trade in the financial sector actually happen. I also note that they are dumb terminals. The banking system, the structure in the way it is today is dumb. But at the left-hand side of it, you have Visa, MasterCard. They drive the origination and creation, and provided the ecosystem how these banks can now link into the global financial sector and link into different ecosystem and platforms so that transactions can happen. You can also include SWIFT, and the company that makes it possible that we can move money around the world. Now, here, the other extreme aspect of it, you have the Flutterwave, you have the pay stack. I call them discovery and the aggregation. So in this section, what is happening here is this, that they are creating value by now bringing people into the financial sector ecosystem so that they can use their own apparatus and systems to participate in the financial sector, which unfortunately for banks, the banks are themselves providing infrastructure that makes it possible to happen. But the value that is created is not necessarily resident here because they have their 5%, 3% transaction fees. The banks themselves, most times, the money comes in, the money moves, and there is nothing they actually do. So for the country Nigeria, we have to now look into the strategy of our industrialization. The industrialization strategy has mostly focused on how can the country play a significant role, I would say, at this level. That means at the fabrication and the manufacturing phase. So if we can make our pencils in Nigeria, we'll be fine. Okay? Yeah, the minister, the government is thinking about how can we make pencils in Nigeria? How can we even make toothpicks in Nigeria? So that's great. But the deal is this: beyond making pencils, Nigeria actually has an opportunity to look at the industrialization plan that takes care of the left and the right hand side and not just the center. Because if you look here, the value is actually here and also here. So focusing on the center is actually not a good idea. So the country has to think about that. Of course, it's interesting that the center provides a lot of jobs. This is where most of the jobs are created. Because Foxconn may employ 1 million people, while Apple, that Foxconn may have to make the iPhone and the iPad and all other devices, may not necessarily have 100,000 people. So Nigeria needs the jobs. We still have to deal with industrialization through the point of manufacturing. But for us to actually get the best value in terms of national economic growth and the vibrancy of our economic system, we have to actually spend significant time building enablers, creating enablers for this left-hand side of R&D as well as the marketing aspect of it. So we need to make the environment so that ideas and brands can actually come and cohabit. So we need to do that because internet is breaking the barriers, removing the frictions that actually made it possible for some of these companies to have existed in the past. It's possible in future, somebody may not need a bank to actually do some of these transactions from customers to customer because the bank itself is just a delivery mechanism. So it could be eliminated. Just like in future, it's possible that we may not even need all these big publishers in order for us to get content of news because the writers can quickly deliver their services direct to Google and Facebook. And once they publish directly there, people go there and consume them without having to go through these publishers. Of course, in this area, technology is also moving at the phase where manufacturing could be squeezed. There are issues of lab on a chip, and we are seeing a new evolutionary process where technology at the nanotechnology level can also begin to squeeze the value that we will get from this manufacturing. So the people that do this are not necessarily going to have a lot of economic power, But of course, they will be very critical because they will need so many hands to do that. So they also make a contribution. But for us as a country, we need to think critically, how can we play at these levels? That is what we need as a country. You are listening to Tekedia Daily. Thank you.